Hi, I'm Jorge,
And I'm Aidan.
and today we'll explore 2,4-dinitrophenol and learn why this drug is so controversial. But before we get into what 2,4-dinitrophenol is, we first have to go over what cellular respiration is, which is what 2,4-dinitrophenol mostly affects.
We'll also go over photosynthesis because it's directly connected to cellular respiration.
Okay, so basically cellular respiration can be separated into three parts: glycolysis
The citric acid cycle.
and oxidative phosphorylation.
Glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm of a cell, and it is the breaking down of glucose molecule, a sugar, into two different pyruvate molecules. During this process, 2 ATP are used to break down the glucose molecule into two 3-carbon sugars, which are each further broken down into a pyruvate molecule, while creating 1 NADH and 2 ATP each, for a net of 2 ATP and 2 NADH. The pyruvate molecules then are broken down in the citric acid cycle, which can also be named the Krebs cycle because of its discoverer, Hans Krebs. This takes place in the matrix or cytocell of the mitochondria.
Now in the citric acid cycle, a pyruvate molecule is broken down and combined with coenzyme A, releasing oxygen and converting NAD plus to NADH to create a 2-carbon sugar called acetyl-CoA. Now this sugar is then broken down by several enzymes in a cyclic fashion. There are many intermediate sugars in the cycle, but it's only necessary to remember citrate, a 6-carbon sugar, and oxaloacetate, a 9-carbon sugar. Citrates come immediately after acetyl-CoA, and oxaloacetate comes immediately before acetyl-CoA. During the citric acid cycle, carbon dioxide is released, and 3 NADH, 1 ATP, and 1 FADH2 are created with each cycle. Now remember, the 2 pyruvate molecules are created by glycolysis, so the citric acid cycle occurs twice, creating a net of 8 NADH, 2 ATP, and 2 FADH2.
Finally, the NADH and FADH2 molecules created in the citric cycle are oxidized in the oxidative phosphorylation, the third step of cellular respiration, which occurs in the mitochondrial membrane. What happens is NADH and FADH2 are received by an oxygen molecule which is converted into water, and a hydrogen proton is transported across the membrane. This process is called oxidation. The hydrogen proton then enters the electron transport chain, which pumps up hydrogen ions into the inner membrane, creating a concentration gradient. The hydrogen ions then go down the concentration gradient through a protein called ATP synthase. This protein harnesses the energy created by the concentration gradient to convert ADP into ATP. At the end of oxidative phosphorylation, 32 ATP are created, and energy is now usable by the body. As you imagine by now, cellular respiration is constantly taking place as creating energy for the body, and we get our sugars from the foods we eat. However, not all living things can pick up the phone and order a pizza.
That's right. Some living things can make their own food, such as plants. These organisms are called heterotrophs. Plants use a process called photosynthesis to make their own food by taking in carbon dioxide and water and creating glucose and oxygen. As you may remember, carbon dioxide and water are the waste released by cellular respiration. Yes, you are right. Cellular respiration and photosynthesis work together to create food and energy for plants and also give off oxygen. Before we go more into photosynthesis, it is important to quickly note that carbon dioxide taken in by plants and the oxygen given off go in and out of the stomata, which are tiny pores in the undersides of the leaves. The size of the stomata is also controlled by guard cells, which help regulate how much carbon dioxide comes into the plant and how much oxygen leaves the plant.
Now, photosynthesis also uses the energy from the sun. Photosynthesis can be broken down into two parts: the light reactions and the Calvin cycle. In the light reaction, photons, light energy, are absorbed in the thylakoid, which are compartments stacked into granum, found in the chloroplast. In the thylakoid, the energy from a photon is used to excite an electron, which is then able to be transported through the electron transport chain to make ATP and NADPH. Water is also oxidized when it loses H ions and yields oxygen. The ATP and NADPH created by the light reactions and the CO2 produced by cellular respiration are then used in the Calvin cycle, which occurs in the stroma, the matrix of the chloroplast, to create glucose. During this process, CO2 combines with the sugar that is broken down throughout the cycle. ATP and DPH are converted into ADP plus and NAD plus to create carbohydrates that combine with the sugar created by CO2 into glucose. Some of the ADP and NAD is also recycled back to the late reactions.
We have a grasp on cell respiration and its connection to photosynthesis. I think it's time to look into 2,4-dinitrophenol. This uncoupling agent, and you might be asking, what's an uncoupling agent? Well, it is a mitochondrial intermembrane protein that can dissipate the proton gradient before it can be used to provide the energy for ATP synthase. Alright, but what does it look like? Well, this uncoupling agent known as DNP is a yellow crystalline solid that has a sweet and musty odor. It was used in diet pills back in the 1930s because of its ability to greatly increase metabolic rate. But how did it do this?
Well, you see, as I was saying earlier, it is an uncoupling agent. It creates a pore in the mitochondrial membrane that allows the hydrogen ions pumped up by the transfer of electrons across the electron transport chain released from the oxidation of NADH to cross the membrane from the matrix into the inner membrane. This action of allowing protons to cross over to the inner membrane reduces the concentration gradient of hydrogen ions that fuels the ATP synthase. The ATP synthase, therefore, is reduced and less ATP is produced. You see, you can think of the mitochondria as a little hydroelectric dams. Carbs and fats fuel the pumping of water, the protons, into the dam, the proton gradient. The water then turns a hydroelectric generator and energy, ATP, is produced. But what happens when you poke a hole into the side of the dam? The water starts to leak out and not much water is left to turn the generator and produce energy, ATP. The protons, not converted into ATP, carry energy that is wasted as heat. Since not as much ATP is created, more food and fat is burned up to create ATP, and your metabolic rate increases, which means you burn more calories or expend more energy. This results in weight and fat loss.
Why then do people not use it more often? Well, it isn't very safe. You see, the DNP causes thermogenesis, which is the creation of heat. DNP causes so much heat that an overdose of DNP can cause hyperthermia. Remember, protons carried through the membrane or leaked are not turned into ATP, and so they carry energy that is wasted as great amounts of heat that can lead to hyperthermia. DNP is also known to have mixed actions, that is, it produces other effects in addition to uncoupling. For example, DNP gradually inhibits electron transport itself as it is incorporated into mitochondrial membranes. The effects appear to depend on the concentration of DNP and of mitochondria, and vary from one preparation to the next.
In conclusion, the difference between weight loss and death is only a small concentration change in dinitrophenol, making the drug extremely dangerous.
Indeed, the uncoupling of electron transport from ATP synthesis allows for dramatic weight loss. However, to quote Ephraim Racker, the treatment eliminated not only the fat, but also the patients. This discouraged physicians for a while.
Thank you.
Thank you. Make sure to subscribe to our videos.